Hello, and welcome to this Montana Technology Innovation Partnership informational webinar. This training is funded in part by the Montana Department of Commerce and the Federal and State Partnership Program through the Small Business Administration. We hope you enjoyed the training today, and if you'd like more information, please go online to www.mtip.mt.gov.
Hi, I'm Marty Elder, and I'll be your presenter for this short presentation on telling your innovation. I've spent about 20 years working with small business innovators and independent inventors, and I've recognized that they've had almost a universal problem in succinctly communicating about their innovations in order to engage with others. So this presentation is going to provide some important information as to how you can effectively communicate about your innovation. The presentation has been sponsored by MTIP, the Montana Technology Innovation Partnership, a program under the State Department of Commerce. MTIP program promotes technology development and commercialization in Montana, and you can see more about the program at www.mtip.mt.gov. As I mentioned, innovators often contact me about services, and they will launch into long-winded explanations of their innovation and the process for developing it, and I'll be taking notes like crazy trying to figure out how I can be of help to them. So your innovation could be high technology that's still in the research and development process, or it might be a consumer goods market type of invention, but either way you still need to very effectively communicate with others outside of your organization. One of the best ways to get yourself to that place is by starting off describing your innovation in writing. This is a way that makes you clarify your information, but it also helps you to avoid unintended confidential disclosures. These are discussed in our intellectual property short presentation, but some information should be kept confidential in order to avoid jeopardizing your ability to patent or otherwise exposing your invention to outside attention. Writing it out makes you separate that confidential from the non-confidential details. A written communication also helps you to make key points about your innovation for very quick assimilation by others that you are trying to contact, and then it also allows that receiving party to review the information prior to a discussion so they can much more effectively communicate with you. Written communications can take many different forms for different purposes. They can range from being marketing type pieces to being summarizing pieces. We're going to focus in on two key approaches that we frequently reference within our program consultations. They are the white paper, which we oftentimes refer to also as a tech write-up or a technology write-up, and they are the sell sheet, which we might also reference as a tech brief. Within this presentation, I'm going to kind of stick with the white paper and sell sheet references just for clarity. To differentiate between these approaches, and these are not formal definitions, a white paper is going to serve more as a technology introduction, and it might be a means to attract some interest that would lead to a fuller proposal or paper about your technology. So an example of this is sometimes with MTIP, when we're going to work with researchers, we ask for a white paper, maybe 1 or 2 pages, as an introductory piece to help us understand what it is they're doing. But sometimes in programs like the Small Business Innovation Research Program, SBIR, or for other types of research proposals, a white paper might be a requirement for the sponsor to look at what you're bringing to them and determine whether or not they're even interested in seeing a full proposal. Whereas a sell sheet tends to be a little bit more of an introduction or an introductory pitch to a prospective collaborator or a service provider. So an example of that is that I regularly use sell sheets to initiate introductory interest in a technology or innovation that I might be marketing to a possible licensee or to a manufacturer. Though these two types of communications are quite differently oriented, both of them require that you have a real focus on with whom you're speaking and why. So first off is you've got to define the receiving audience. Who's on the other end of your written communication? For example, it might be a service provider like myself, and I need to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. I need to know where I might fit into that picture. Sometimes, like I said, it's the R&D funding sponsors under a program, and they're trying to determine whether to invite more information from you. Or then again, like I said, it could be your collaborators. It could be somebody who's going to help you on a project. It could be a licensing partner. The second piece here is you've got to define your purpose. If it's undirected, it's just a lot of words, and the reader's not going to understand why you've sent that to them, perhaps. So this is a problem-solution piece to generate meaningful interaction or an invitation for further interaction. Here are a few basic things for your written piece, regardless of whether it's a white paper or a sell sheet. First of all, there is no singular template. You're not going to go online and find a universal template for white papers. They all need to have clarity. They should be understandable by a layperson, even though your technology is far more intricate and technical than perhaps represented. It's got to be understandable by all people. It's got to be brief. Information can be provided later or could be sent as an appendix item at a later date. You need to have white space, subheadings, guide a reader to very quickly move through it and understand what you're doing. And finally, don't forget your contact information. A lot of times white papers might go out or a sell sheet might be sent out with a cover email, but if those get separated from one another, they're not going to know who to contact. Both types of written communications need these following basic content pieces. Now, this may seem like a lot of information, but in the process of boiling this down to a page or two, it's going to be very helpful to your own perceptions as to what's really important. So first of all, we need a brief description of what your technology or invention is all about. Maybe that'll include how it works, but again, this has to be brief. One way to keep it brief is to hone in on what industry problem is being addressed and how that problem is presently solved. By stating that perhaps a problem presently is being solved by a very labor-intensive fashion, that's fine. We need to know what's being used now in the state of the art. That will lead you to provide benefits, why your solution is better than what's already being done. And finally, who are you? What do you want? These kinds of things can't be left off, or your reader's going to lose interest in somebody just dumping information into their lap. So let me hone in a little further on each type of the two written communications I'm discussing here. First of all, with white papers, also known as tech write-ups, we've got purpose of usually making an introduction to secure some services or collaboration, but this also could be a mini proposal that could lead to an invitation for a full proposal, and it can be a very good means by which you center your current R&D needs. The content starts with those basics I just discussed. What is it? What problem is solved? What benefit it offers? What are you seeking? And contact information. Those go with each of these kinds of written communications. Now there's some other things that might be helpful to your reader for a technical white paper. First of all, the level of development at which you've already taken your innovation. Some future milestones can be important, and as is putting your technology within the context of market demand. Sometimes you might be discussing a very technical component that doesn't stand out to others as to what do you do with it. So make sure you give context. The length I suggest is somewhere in the 1 to 5 pages, but there are formats that will request as much as 20 pages. Just remember that the longer it is, the more likely it's not going to be read in full. So if you're trying to get the attention of someone who doesn't know you or your technology, keep it to the point. A specific example of white papers are those seeking research project funding. For those of you who develop proposals, for example, under the SBIR program or perhaps under a broad agency announcement, also known as a BAA, sometimes a white paper or letter of intent is actually a requirement under the program announcement or solicitation. Never use an old white paper that was developed for another purpose without first customizing it to make sure it speaks directly to the project funding sponsor. Content that's needed beyond the basics, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have a technical discussion that's going to have to be very focused and precise and written at a layperson's level. You want to talk about the technology level. Sometimes this is called the technology readiness level, TRL. What has already been done to get you there? Your objectives as far as what you want to pitch for being in your R&D proposal should be laid out not in detail, very succinctly, along with a line or so on your research team qualifications that would help to make a sponsor feel confident about funding the project. An example of this is the USDA SBIR program, in which case we encourage you to talk to the various program topic managers. And a good way to initiate this interaction is by sending your white paper by email and asking for an appointment to discuss the suitability for their mission, their topics, the program. This gives them an opportunity to glance through it. Hopefully it's not much longer than a page, maybe a page and a half, and they can prepare things they want to discuss with you, what they feel is important after they've reviewed that piece. We frequently get asked for sample white papers, but first of all, these aren't written for public release, so we can't provide you those documents. And if you search online for samples, you're going to see lots and lots of different ways of approaching a white paper. Don't get confused. Just remember that there are different focuses for using a white paper, so be very practical as to what will serve your needs the best, but it will give you some reinforcement as you try and develop your own style. Now, going back down to the sell sheets, the tech briefs, let me hone in on those once again. Purpose is to introduce or pitch your technology to someone who's completely unfamiliar with it. Now, you're likely to have some different purpose for this. You start with your content basics. What is it? What problems are solved? What benefits to others? What are you seeking? Your contact information. But now consider what added content will really draw the attention that you need. So, for example, a graphic can be very important for a sell sheet. You also want to hone in on what your purpose is for sending the piece. These should only be about 1 to 2 pages long, and they need to be both eye-catching and on point, and most definitely written for the layperson. So let me now get into the example of sell sheets that you might be sending out to build collaborations. First of all, I customize in accordance with the purpose. So perhaps that's seeking a outside consultant to work with me on a research project, or perhaps it's an introduction to a prospective licensee. The content needs to be developed to be very on point with what you're seeking. The technical discussion is not going to be quite so detailed. It's going to be in much more of a marketing context. For example, you might be putting it into what the market demand is or what type of industry it suits. It may have a little bit of market numbers to give a sense of the dimension of that market. The intellectual property might need to be referenced if you've got patents, trademarks, that kind of thing. It'd be good to tell a licensing prospect, for instance, so what's available. I would always add a graphic. That may not be a picture of your technology. It just might be a general photograph that evokes an understanding of what the industry application would be and which will draw attention to the piece. Finally, you need to state clearly the purpose of delivering the information. This can be put into a cover memo that you send out with it, perhaps an email to which it's attached, but you should also state on the sell sheet itself that you're seeking a licensee or you're seeking a project collaborator or whatever. Once again, on the subject of examples, these are more easily found because they don't generally include sensitive company information. You can take a look at these websites listed below: the Montana State University, TechLink, and U of M, all Montana organizations, all have technology sales sheets at their websites. I'll post these addresses again in the last slide so that you'll have a chance to write those down or to open those links and see what they're doing with those. To quickly recap, you're creating a written piece before you're trying to engage with outside parties for any purpose. When you're delivering a message, you want to make sure that it gets read, and you want to make sure that it says what you intended. So put some time into these pieces and make sure they work well for you. The basic content for innovation white papers and sell sheets includes what your innovation is. That might entail mentioning how it works, what industry problem is being addressed, why you have offered a better solution, the benefits of your technology or innovation, who you are, and what you want. And yes, all of that information can be delivered in 1 to 2 pages. Here is a summary of some differentiated content for white paper and sell sheet. In the white paper, that technology discussion needs to be focused and precise while still being in understandable layperson language. You want to put in something about the technology level, what has already been accomplished, your upcoming research and development objectives, and something qualifying the research team. Whereas the sell sheet refinements might include a technical discussion that's more in a marketing context, reference your intellectual property, add a graphic, and state clearly the purpose for delivering the information. Once again, here are the web addresses for sell sheet examples. MTIP can help you further with innovation development and commercialization. Take a look for more information at www.mtip.mt.gov.
Thank you for your interest in this webinar. You can find more training materials on the SBIR STTR opportunity at www.mtip.mt.gov.